one of the things I found shocking is how few accidents we actually have. So we should try to distinguish between, you know, perceived safety. Let me see how to phrase this. I hate turning left out of Lindenwood. I hate turning left on a lot of places in town. And we're trying to figure out how to address that. This is part of that conversation. Lights and all that, I'll just tell you as a practical matter, as a council member, they're very expensive and they take years. It took us, I think, 2.5 years to get pedestrian lights on El Camino. Remember, there were some people that were run over. And it's that kind of a time frame. So just so you know, it's a difficult thing to do. But we need to hear that kind of feedback. It'll be considered.
Somebody's washing their hands.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Ms. Walker. Let me just introduce myself. I'm the one who's controlling the screen, actually, and my name is Ian Lin. I'm from the consultant team, assisting the town, working on this project. We're a bunch of traffic engineers and planners. And again, thank you, Mike, for that feedback, and also Ms. Walker. So what we're here today is just to try to get the most out of you guys. I can see Rishi raised his hand. And what we're gonna do here is, you know, it was a valid point. James Middlefield and Linda Middlefield will document all these good comments, and then the project team will go back and digest a little bit and come up with a summary of all the input that we collect today and also in next week. So maybe we should, you know, whenever you feel like you have a thought or you want to express yourself, please raise your hand. And I can see, let me just pull that list out. And depending on, you know, the timing of, you know, you raise hand, it will be put in order. So I can see Rishi being on top. So you want to go ahead, Rishi?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First, thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it. Some feedback for just next session before I get into the specific thing. We're like 45 minutes in and we're just starting the actual listening.
Mm-hmm.
So just some, you know, suggestion for next week, just to go a little bit quicker in the upfront section, just to condense it down. It's just like minor. I'll tell you my area of feedback. So I live on Watkins, as does Brittany, who had to go put her kid down. So just say Watkins from El Camino to Holbrook Park. So it's a little lower on your map here. If you can scroll down, Ian, I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, yeah. So literally, it's literally from El Camino to the train tracks. And I'm not just saying this because there's a lot of young families by our area. There's just a lot of people that go to Holbrook Park and they use Watkins as that corridor to get there. Mm-hmm. And it is like really, really unsafe. And to Patricia's point in the main session, I'd love to just see a sidewalk put there. Mm-hmm. There's just tons of city property. I'd be happy to give my curb away. But I think the safety for my kids and everyone's kids around here, it is just, there have been multiple occasions where they've been like grazed or like very closely hit. So I think Brittany will attest to this, but it's like, we'd love to, and it's not just for the families that live on Watkins, just to be clear. If you just monitor the amount of foot traffic going down this area, it's quite high.
Okay.
So it's 8 minutes to 7. I'll start eating the thing.
Okay.
Try your trade. I'll start with 3 minutes. See.
And for what it's worth, while I have the mic and waiting, it'd be also great to see speed bumps put on this road as well, but just to slow down traffic.
This is a breakout.
Yeah, I see what I'm saying. So you're saying from commuter rail, Watkins, all the way to the Caltrain rail track. There's a lacking of safer pedestrian walkway. Right. Okay.
And there's a sidewalk that is west or east, sorry, of the train tracks already.
Right. Okay. That's good. So we're gonna save at the end. We're gonna save all these sketches up so that we have a good have it get documented. I can see Britt. Let me lower your hand and you can. Let me ask you to unmute. Britt.
Hi, thank you so much. I live next door to Rishi, and we have been talking to a variety of the people who live on our street. And the only thing that I wanted to add that Rishi didn't say, which amen to everything he already said, is that there are like a dozen kids who use Watkins and then cross through Holbert Palmer Park to get to school every day.
Okay.
Which obviously we're not going to school right now, but there's a pretty significant chunk of children who use that 4 times a day to get to and from school. Which I don't know what the collector category is, but Watkins was labeled as a collector category in that first map. But it is also a very minor way that we get to school every day. That's it.
Schoolers living on Watkins. Yes,
Yeah,
the
I think the
Encinal
school is going to be Encinal, yes.
Elementary. They
And
walk across the park and go to school and come back afternoon. Okay.
and then high school students who are riding their bike to Menlo Atherton. There's 2 high school students.
All right. So I'm assuming they're trying to avoid major roadways
Yeah,
like Middlefield.
we do have a pathway through the park that hooks into the Felton Gables neighborhood.
Yes.
So it's at the east end of the park, pretty much right along the edge there where you have the cursor. Or sorry, I have my cursor, but
this area?
no, further down towards it's parallel to the train tracks. Yeah, so from there going to the right.
Okay.
And then it crosses into the neighborhood. Thank you so much for the comment.
It crosses.
Thank you.
Is there somebody else with a raised hand?
That would be me, David. And it's sort of a general comment. I'm a frequent user of Watkins. When I have things going on in West Atherton, Redwood City, I'm using El Camino. I want to head back to Lindenwood. Watkins is a frequent choice. And I would concur with the 2 residents of, I guess we can call it Lower Watkins, that it just feels dicey driving through there. Once you get past the tracks, Watkins and Glenwood and Encinal in this section just inspire speeding. And I'm not talking like, 40 or 50 miles an hour. I'm talking about 5 to 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limits, or even if they're not posted, they're 25 miles an hour. And the same is true in Lindenwood. James Ave is arrow straight, and Oak Grove, not so much. Ringwood on the border there. It's a major collector for Menlo Atherton High School. All of these streets that have a clear view, especially Watkins, east of the railroad tracks. You've got the straight view to Middlefield, and people will just, they won't floor it, but they floor it. So it's a problem inherent in the design of the street, and I don't know what any kind of possible solution would be other than increased enforcement or traffic calming devices. Anyway, it's common between all of the straight shots from El Camino to Middlefield and then Middlefield into Area 1.
Okay. Thank you.
So someone mentioned, speed bumps. That is one of many possible solutions from the engineering perspective. There are also bulb outs or raised physical barriers, narrowing down the roadway as you pass along and creating that narrowing effect to slow down motorists. And enforcement is also one of them. And you're right about that. I also see John.
Yes. This is to some extent perhaps duplicative of what David and you just said. But the question of enforcement I find is interesting. And I don't know to what extent enforcement recommendations are part of an emerging plan. But we've talked largely about physical things like, widening roadways, putting in sidewalks. And earlier, Mike Lempress talked about the struggle that the town went through to get those blinking crossing lights on El Camino because there had been accidents there. It took a long time, years to get it approved and installed. And now that they're installed, in some dimensions, those crossings are more hazardous than they used to be because people expect people to stop for those blinking lights. And in a significant number of cases, they don't. And I've seen people out in the middle just have a car whistle by within inches of them without ever blinking. And that's just sort of a usual complaint of somebody who thinks he sees something bad happening. But I guess my more fundamental question is, to what extent are enforcement recommendations or some sort of, regulation modification part of the expected to be part of the traffic plan?
Ian, let me take that on. Just as a point of background, we regularly work with the police department with regards to doing some radar analysis of some of the traffic on particular streets to help them understand what the peak times for folks are that do migrate above the speed limit so that they can take a look at the actual data. And they usually put up the radar box for about a week, and it'll provide some feedback as to when key enforcement times might be for a given speed limit for a group of traffic above a given speed limit. And so I will say, for example, actually last week there was a radar set up on Watkins Avenue across from the park. And the PD pulled the data from that, and it indicated, basically that there were a couple of peak times of the day wherein there were folks that were driving, in excess of 35 miles an hour on the road, so that they can advise their traffic patrol that, during this period of time, you may want to go, as you're out and about, this may be one of those stops that you want to be at during these particular hours.
Robert, if I could,
so
though,
yes, it is a major tool in the toolbox.
I was going to say, just if I can, to answer John's question directly, we do want to hear feedback about everything, right? And enforcement is a tool,
yes,
as much as anything else. So John, the answer to your question is please bring that kind of stuff up. That's part of what we want to hear.
Good. So next we have Kelvin.
Hi, I just wanted to add, I think roundabouts are being considered in various places. And I've seen the way that Redwood City implemented their roundabouts, which is very confusing because they have the roundabout and then they put 4 stop signs around the roundabout, which that just confuses people, I believe, because a roundabout should not have stop signs. And most of our residents, I believe, are fairly well traveled in countries that use lots of roundabouts. There's no stop signs. So if you do go down that path, please get rid of the stop signs and just have the roundabout, or keep the stop signs and don't do the roundabout, but don't try this hybrid thing that just confuses the heck out of everybody. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I do see Rishi again.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the enforcement as like a calming measure. I think the challenge with it is it's not consistent. You know, the purpose behind it is like, hey, it's a deterrent. You get caught, people know that cops are waiting, but like I just haven't seen it being effective. And I'm not sure if it's COVID related or not because they're out less, but like it hasn't been effective at reducing the speed on Watkins, to your point, Robert. So I feel like there's a need to take a more aggressive action, specifically with the area that you mentioned. So I just wanted to make sure that like we're kind of thinking about this holistically and like trying to address the problem more aggressively than taking some of the more subtle measures.
Well, thank you, Rishi. I think, as we said, what we want to do is hear where the major issues are as residents perceive them or see them, so that we understand better from you where you feel the problems are before we talk about what the potential solution might be in a particular location. And so we would like to take a holistic approach, particularly if there are if there's clustered issues, because one solution in a particular area might migrate something else into a different area. So we do want to understand from folks, you know, as specific as they can provide, and we're willing to even take the general information, general concerns, so that we can take that input and feedback.
Thank you. Next we got David Jones.
Actually, it's his wife, Ann Walker. Over the past, I don't know, gosh, 3 or 4 years, there was a major project, on Marsh Road to replace the culvert, whatever you call it, and
Atherton drainage channel.
Excuse me?
The Atherton drainage.
The Atherton drainage channel. Thank you, dear. And you know, I think they did a great job, but when you're talking about bicycle and pedestrian safety, it is non-existent on the Atherton stretch of Marsh Road. And there are people who try to walk and bike there. My observation is that I believe that channel, that irrigation or drainage channel, I think it's plenty wide enough that you could put a boardwalk right over the top of it, and you could probably even have it divided between two-way bike traffic and a place for people to walk. I mean, you'd have to check it out, but I think it's really doable. And because it's there now, why don't we take advantage of it? Because people, it's so dangerous for people walking or biking along Marsh Road. I mean, they usually end up on the far side trying to dodge trees on little dirt trails. And I just think we have a great opportunity. When I mentioned this once before, I was shot down and told, well, but when you get to the end of the drainage channel and it goes underneath, then suddenly you're in Menlo Park and it opens up to 4 lanes. And I understand that, but you could put a protected crosswalk at the end of the drainage channel going across, because there is a sidewalk on the other side. So if you couldn't get Menlo Park to do something on the right side, continuing east, you could put a protected crosswalk for bikes and pedestrians so they could get across Marsh Road, which is a really, really busy street. And then the pedestrians could go on the sidewalk and the bikes could go into the lesser residential streets and be safe. Has anybody ever thought about that?
Well, no one else is going to respond. I'm happy to take this, Robert. Just it's designed to do that. The channel, when we did that work on the channel, or on Marsh Road rather, it was designed to be able to put a cap on the channel when funding became available to put either a bike path or a pedestrian walkway or something over. We haven't identified funding for it, but it's sort of a long-term option that was considered and is consistent with the work that was done on the channel, specifically consistent with that. But there's been, again, no funding identified and no specific plans to get it done in the next, say, 2 to 3 years.
Well, that's wonderful. And hopefully when we finish the town center project, maybe we can look for some funding.
Right. I see John.
Okay, in the absence of other raised hands, I'll have another question.
Sure.
There's
Welcome.
been, you know, there are obvious concerns about intersections. And I live right off Fair Oaks Lane. If I want to go to El Camino, it's fine. There's a stoplight there. If I'm doing it on Watkins, there's no stoplight. It's harder. If I'm going on the Middlefield, there's a stop sign on Fair Oaks, but not on Middlefield. So sometimes there's a very long wait. So if we put in a bunch of additional stoplights or stop signs, as has been sort of suggested or at least hinted at, it would probably make the left turners happier, but it would certainly make the people on the main roads less happy. And how, and you know, again, I'm not suggesting one or the other. I'm just sort of asking how in the course of the analysis, that the kind of analyses that you guys do, how do you evaluate those trade-offs?
All right. Would you mind repeat the exact location again?
I'll take that on. I'll take that on here.
Sure.
So the answer is yes, there are trade-offs. And part of that is going to be, well, what are, you know, really what are the benefits and who's going to be accruing them, as well as, you know, where does that time come from for that? And we're not going to presuppose solutions at this point, but feedback from the community is something that is highly desired before we endeavor to put in something as major as a traffic signal, because of, as you said, the impacts that will accrue.
Well, and in some sense, I think the feedback from the community is just going to get you one side of the table. The people who are going to be perhaps adversely affected by those stoplights on, for example, Middlefield, are not primarily, I think, from Atherton. There are people who are going wherever they're going, coming down from north to south or the other way.
Yeah, well, I'll give an example of a trade-off, and I'm not going to say that that would happen in a particular location, but we've seen in other areas where there is a stop sign or a stoplight or whatever, that traffic may divert itself onto a local street to avoid. And so that's one of the trade-offs that needs to be considered, as well as you're indicating, the main line. And so it's not an easy answer. And that's why we're going through this effort to get feedback from our residents. And as we talk about solutions in the future, we are coming back to the residents to get feedback as well. I hope that helps answer.
Yes.
Next, we have David Jones again.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Marsh Road is sort of a 800-pound gorilla in the room. All of the potential traffic solutions for left turns out of, Fair Oaks, Watkins, and probably on the other side on the avenues. Are going to bollocks up Marsh Road worse than it already is. I mean, as it is, even in COVID times, forget pre-COVID times, even in COVID times, at 4:30, 5 o'clock, traffic backs up almost to Fair Oaks for left turners onto Marsh Road. And there's always a significant pileup in northbound traffic trying to turn right onto Marsh Road. So if you have traffic control stop sign light at Watkins or Fair Oaks, then the monkey wrench is Marsh Road.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask a question to find out whether or not folks have been able to use and access the survey and interactive map on the website. And you can just simply raise your hand if you've been able to do that, or hit yes. And we want to know from you whether or not you think that's a good tool to solicit input from you and your neighbors with regards to concerns.
That was kind of multiple questions, so I don't think I can just raise my hand. But I think the survey was
okay.
I think the survey was useful, and although I have to say it sometimes it didn't have all the choices that I wanted, so there probably should have been on almost all the questions. There should have been an other, please explain. But on the map, as I think I said earlier in chat, I tried to do it on my iPhone, and it was basically impossible. I'm not convinced that what I thought I did actually worked. So I think I'll try it again on the desktop. But is it supposed to be mobile friendly?
It is. I know it works on tablets. Phone screens are sometimes a little difficult, but I think as I responded to you in the chat, we're happy to try and work with you to figure out the best way to get your what your concerns are, and whether that is via the web map or email, or even if we chat with you and just jot down notes, we'll take the information any way we can get it.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I do definitely support using technology as much as possible to get more data.
Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more raised hands. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you so much. Oh, one more.
One more.
John, you're muted. Hold on just a second and we'll unmute you.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I just can't stand empty spaces in conversations like this, I guess. I have just gone through a review of the environmental impact report of the High-Speed Rail Authority. And one of the things that was glaringly obvious from that as affects the town of Atherton is the question of gate downtimes as the rail traffic on both Caltrain and the High-Speed Rail Authority increased. And it seems to me that, I don't know exactly how you do it, but it seems to me that part of the planning and part of the analysis should try to deal with that. You know, it's not going to be an issue immediately, but over the next few years it will be, and we should have some anticipation of how we could deal with it.
Thank you. And I'm going to thank everybody for participating tonight. We do appreciate that you've taken the time out of your evening to to talk to us and let us know your thoughts. A reminder again that we really are looking forward to receiving your feedback, your neighbors' feedbacks, with regards to issues, not just in your neighborhood, but throughout the town. We know that as you go home or go somewhere else, you're not just driving in your neighborhoods, you're driving through town on other streets. And so we really appreciate that you are taking out the time this evening, and hopefully can use the interactive map, jot down the areas of concern so that we're aware of it. Share the information with your neighbors. Please encourage those that haven't been able to attend tonight to join us on Thursday next week. But even if they can't, access the map, access the website, reach out to us, let us know, please, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay, well, good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Will you be able to save the chat?
Yeah, I don't see an option, so I'm just copying the whole thing. Yeah.
What about the recording?
Yeah, I have the recording on.
Cool. We didn't do much drawings.
Mm-hmm.
It was quick.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not able to copy this. I'm not able to copy it. Are you able to? The group channel?
And this is actually all the way from the beginning. This is like everything. Oh, I can't either.
Do I stop the recording now?
Yeah.